Welcome to the Self-Care Sound Mind podcast. In this space, we're going to talk about the losses we don't always have the language for. Because grief isn't only about losing someone we love. Sometimes it's the end of a relationship, a friendship that's faded, a dream that's changed, or the life we thought we'd have. In this series, we're naming all kinds of grief that often go unseen. And we're going to learn how to move through them with compassion. On this episode, we're going to continue our conversation with the grief men carry, and we're going to talk about fatherhood and the hidden grief of men with my special guest, Patrick Casey of Time and Patience Consultants. Come on and join the conversation. Share this post, tag a friend, and let everybody know that the Self-Care Sound Mind podcast is back with another great episode. Welcome to the Self-Care Sound Mind podcast. I am your host, Kiara Moore, and I am so excited to have another wonderful episode discussing the grief that we don't always talk about. It's so easy to think about grief only in terms of death, but we want to go beyond that explanation of grief and uncover some areas that aren't often talked about. Because grief is not only about losing someone, sometimes it's about the end of a relationship, a friendship that's faded, a dream that has changed or hasn't come to pass, or even just not having the life that you thought you would have at this point. So in this series, we're going to name these different kinds of grief that often go unseen, and we're going to learn how to move through them with compassion. We don't just want to talk about it, but we want to give you useful tools that will help you with some of these things that people just don't seem to talk about. And we are going to continue our conversation on the grief that men carry. We already don't talk enough about grief, but we definitely leave out our men and our children. So we're starting this second, part 2 of this series of grief. And we are going to continue the conversation on the grief men carry. And we are going to talk about fatherhood and the grief that men carry with that. And so I am so excited to welcome my special guest for the evening, Mr. Pat Casey. Hi, Pat.
Hello, young lady. How you doing?
I'm good. I know it's been a long day, but I'm super excited about the conversation. And I know that deep down inside you are too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a very special topic that I think uh, not just men, but everyone society needs to understand about grief loss. And you mentioned how it looks differently for men.
Mm-hmm.
All men. We could also say ethnicities also.
Mm-hmm.
But this is an important topic, and thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Tell the people who you are, what you do, just a little bit about Mr. Casey for the few people who may not already know.
Oh, wow. I'm a professional helper, Kiara. I've been doing this before I knew what this profession was about, to be quite honest. From childhood, I was helping people, and I was guided into this profession. When I went to college, I did not know. Ended up in college is when I finally focused on how I wanted to help and really became much more aware of how I wanted to help. So I've been a professional licensed counselor about 25 years. I've been in private practice. I've worked in schools. I've worked in judicial legal systems such as the juvenile detention centers. I worked in summer camps. That's when I was a little young youth, working in summer camps, helping kids that were maybe a year younger than me. So I view myself as a professional helper. Forget the titles, I'm a helper.
Well, I love that because, it's easy to forget why you do what you do. As you know, we talk to people all day long. And so, again, thank you for talking to me after a
No,
full day of
no.
talking to people. But when you do that, sometimes, and I really see it in the medical profession, like when you're used to doing something over and over again, sometimes the emotion gets turned off, right? And sometimes you can hear people with similar situations, or they're coming in week after week, and it's easy for you to think that you know that person, or you know that situation, or it's a familiar situation. But it's kind of harder to stay grounded and remember that you're here to help, right? You're here to help that person with that particular problem. And so to hear that you've been able to maintain uh, that position as a helper all these years and not forget what it's really about is encouraging.
Yeah. Well, intentionality is what life is all about. So you have
Hmm.
to be intentional with anything you do if you're going to be helpful and effective. So sometimes we lose our path,
Yeah.
and I have to sometimes, once again, remind myself to be intentional. Otherwise, as you know, Kiara, helping is not easy.
Hmm.
It is not easy. So being intentional, and that helps me to stay present so that I could be the best helper to anyone that's in my circle.
Hmm. So last week on the podcast, we had, I'm not sure if you know Gary Jones. I had him on there, and um, we talked about the beginning of this conversation with the grief that men carry. And one of and that episode was on the boy who was told not to cry, and how that really, that messaging from being, a young kid into adulthood, how it really shapes young men. And thinking about that episode and leading into the messages that you receive as a child and how they impact your life as an adult, it makes me think about fatherhood, right? And how now, in some cases, you have fathers who are trying to reparent their own selves so that they can properly parent their children. Or you may have fathers who really are not sure what to do because they didn't have that great example. And so it's interesting how it just continues with that message of it starts in your childhood, right? And so um, that journey of growing up from being a boy who was told not to cry, or being feeling or being misunderstood, and then growing into your adulthood, that can't be easy. So what can you share about, maybe whether you want to talk about a personal standpoint or what you've seen as a clinician, for that transition into fatherhood, for a person who may not really know how to be emotionally healthy?
Excellent question. It's also a pet peeve of mine, if I can use that expression, of men, um, especially men, uh, men of color, socioeconomically, men who are poor, that many of us grew up, as you know this already, Kiara, many of us grew up lacking healthy male figures in our lives.
Mm,
Many of us come from single parent households. I am the product of a single parent household. And that lack of having a healthy, I'm going to emphasize
mm,
healthy male in the home, it has an impact. And anyone who says it does not, then I don't believe they're being genuine. It has an impact. It doesn't necessarily have to be a negative impact. I would like to say that coming from a single parent home without a father, I used it as energy to um, be the best father I can. Um, However, I did not have a healthy male to role model what fatherhood is.
Mm,
And as I reflect on my childhood, the communities that I came from, many of us, I want to say all of us, but all of the friends that I had as a young teenager, none of us had fathers in our lives.
mm.
Uh, if I could make a joke, it was like, "You have a father? Can I see what does that look like? You have one?" But that was the truth of my history, and I think that happens in many of the African American community throughout the history of this country. Is that our fathers were not there for various reasons.
Hmm.
So we've had to figure this fatherhood journey out without a guide, and for a young mind, that's never healthy.
Yeah. So how would you say you overcame the challenges that come with not having a father? And did you notice a difference between your journey and maybe some of those friends you mentioned that you grew up with?
How did I overcome it? Well, I came from a very connected and very close knit family,
Mm,
uh, very matriarchal family. And I had role models, even though I didn't have my father. I had uncles. I had in my upbringing, I had coaches. I was into sports a lot. So a
mm,
lot of the coaches, you may say, were quasi role models. And they kind of inspired and shaped that wisdom of sharing with you what you should do, what you shouldn't do. So that was very helpful in my upbringing. But at the end of the day, um, my family was the safety net that
mm.
gave me that resiliency so that I can figure it out. And but then you also have to have that intrinsic need of wanting to be a father.
And that's such a good point, because as you were talking, I was thinking about that. I often look at it like you either try to be the opposite or you become it,
Yeah,
right? And and most people say they want to be the opposite of whatever negative experience they've gone through, or whatever negative role model they may have had, or absentee position in their life. They want to be the opposite of that person. But just saying that you want to be better, or you want to be different, or do different, it doesn't just happen, right? There takes a whole lot of effort to become the opposite of what you see. What's easiest is to look up and try to figure out, well, how did I get here? Like, I
yeah.
never wanted to be this way. It's easier to kind of fall down the path that you saw. So how do you be better when you didn't really have an example of what better looked like?
Hmm. Well, I guess that's what we're trying to figure out. However, once again, I think there's an unidentifiable intrinsic flavor to us. I can speak from my perspective. I determined before I had children
Mm,
that if I was blessed enough to have children, I was going to be connected to them,
mm,
um, and that was a non-negotiable. And that meant whether I stayed with my wife, who's the father, the mother of my children, or not. So before I had children, that was a commitment I made to myself. So
mm.
that's from my perspective that, regardless of if I have children, I'm going to be involved in their lives, and I would figure it out. So once again, that's an aspect that the individual needs to have, that internal makeup. Um,
Mhm.
that being said, it is a very difficult job.
Yes. Well, parenting is difficult in general.
Absolutely.
That's just
You know,
it's just difficult, right? But
yeah.
when you and we see it, right? And I my children are still young, so I have to laugh at my own self sometimes when I think about like they really can take you places. But when you are a parent and you're going through these difficult times, you have to remember that you're all figuring it out, right? You got this little person looking at you like, I ain't never been here before. And then you looking at them like, I ain't never been nobody's parent before. So, you know what I mean? Like, we in this together. We're trying to figure out how this works. And then the second one comes along, and then you like, now I done figured it out a little bit. And they still like, well, I ain't. I'm new here. So
Mhm.
I don't really know how we do things here. But you still have to find a way to not allow those natural responses, right, of frustration, uh,
Yeah.
really get into the way of what you're trying to bring out of that kid. Because I look at my kids sometimes and I'm like, man, you're really going to be responsible for some great things in the world. And I got to make sure I don't mess that up. You know, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially my youngest one who tests the inner gangster on a daily basis. Like, he makes me question, do I do I handle this as a therapist or a black mom? Like, I have to run that through my mind on a daily basis. How do I need to teach you a lesson, but how do I want to teach it today? You know, but I'm still like, okay, you don't want, so many times you see when we work with kids, you see parents who they're not able to parent that particular child, and we see the result of kind of crushing their spirit.
Yeah.
And when you don't really know, when you're figuring it out like in
Yeah.
uncharted territory, if you're not careful, that's possible. And so not really having a guide, like, I understand, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, that
Yeah.
that's difficult, but that's also not enough of, it's not a good enough reason not to try your best. You know what I
Well,
mean? And oh, go ahead.
that's why it can become generational in our family.
Mm,
Because I'm a strong advocate that, is it nature or is it nurture?
mm-hmm.
Is it genetics or is it the environment? And I believe it's both. However, uh, I believe, and research supports it, that the environment has a powerful influence on
Yes.
who we are. Who you are right now, who I am right now, was a byproduct significantly impacted by the environment, how we were raised and what we were exposed to. The genetic part does play a role, but to
Mm-hmm.
a lesser extent of who you are and who I am right now. So, obviously, when we're exposed to various traumas and ACEs as children, that shapes us. It
Yeah.
influences us. It's not causal, but it is
Right.
correlational.
Right. Right.
So that plays a role in sustaining this generational family trajectories that we have. And this is not an indictment on single mothers. The single mothers have been the backbone of our families for generations,
Mm-hmm.
and they
Mm-hmm.
should be honored and they should be valued, and they are. Uh, However, I think the dam is breaking.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
think the 21st century, it's harder, more of a challenge for single parents to parent, much less uh, manage some of the young men that they have right now by themselves. It's once again, we're in a different generation with all the
Yeah.
technology and the various things to
Right. I was
distract.
gonna say the influence of social media, and you, before you could, you know, kind of shield somewhat by proximity. Well, I'm not going
Yeah.
to allow you to go in certain places, or I'm going to send you to a family member's house to get you away from a certain crowd.
Yeah.
You got access everywhere you go. There's no hiding anymore. They know
Exactly.
exactly where you are on this planet based on that phone you carrying. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So everything is the accessibility to things that are positive and negative, or it's just there. So it is harder to kind of parent and shield, and when you are doing it by yourself,
Wow. Yeah.
an
Yeah.
uphill battle. It makes me think though, I it's interesting. I saw a I should have looked it up again, but I saw a statistic. I don't know the exact numbers, but there is a rise and consistency in the amount of marriages in the black community. So that has been not only on the rise, but the length of the marriages as well. And while that's wonderful, right? That's beautiful. I think about doing a lot of couples counseling and things where there's still this breakdown of what being a husband and a father means,
Mhm.
from the male and female perspective. So
Yes.
we can shift into that a little bit. I'd like to hear from you because I am hearing still, now I do get some men. I've had quite a few men come and who were comfortable, so that's great. Pat myself on the back. But of course, primarily I work with women, and I'm working with quite a few where it's like there's still this breakdown of what the role of a father looks like in a healthy home. Now granted, everything ain't for everybody, and you guys can set your standards in your household, but the conversation is not really being had of what fatherhood or parenting is going to look like from both parties, or even what a healthy marriage is going to look like. So from your standpoint, what can you share about healthy fatherhood?
Well, if you believe what I said, that our families are, haven't been whole for hundreds of years now. As you know, when you do the couples work, you have different parenting strategies,
Yes.
right? The mom says, "Here's the problem I have with my son or my daughter," and the father says, "Well, I don't have those problems."
Hmm.
That dichotomy I hear a lot when I do my couples work is the mother will say one thing and the father says another, and they both come from different upbringing. So what was their parenting environment like? So what do? We utilize what we came from as the frame of reference for parenting. So that dynamics now starts to create uh, challenges in the marriage. And we all know marriages are difficult enough without that.
Okay.
So now we have different views on parenting.
Yeah.
And once again, that rises the barometer in the relationship. And then the expectations, once again, female expectation, male expectations.
Mhm.
Those are speed bumps that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, they become, a cliff.
Mhm.
So the parenting styles is what I've seen in my experience as as a therapist that can either mitigate the healthiness of that child, or um, it can worsen it because of that blended message that child is receiving.
Yeah. I,
Uh,
I I find a lot. I don't know. It seems to be like what I see with my clients is either on very different ends of the spectrum where um and two things can be true at the same time, right? You can be
Absolutely.
a pretty crappy spouse and a great father. You could be, a great spouse and a crappy father. You could just be crappy all around.
Mhm.
But I find that the emotionally unavailable men. I'm getting a lot of those complaints still. And what I hear a lot with that is men who, I don't know them, so it's speculation, but it seems like they've carried on that messaging from their childhood of not being free to emote, right? Like you can't cry, so
Yeah,
you disconnect. And now you've been married 30 years and you guys are miserable because there's still no emotional connection after 30 years because he's never learned how to connect to
yeah,
his own emotions, let alone to the emotional needs of someone else. So then it's like,
absolutely.
what I do should be enough. What I bring to the table should be enough. And then there's this push pull of, but I need that emotional connection. And they're just not able to because that emotional connection never existed, even within themselves.
Yeah. Well, you know how you know this already, Kiara. The how society has defined the roles of men,
Mm-hmm.
and we try to live up to that image of what male manhood is,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not sustainable.
No.
It's a myth. So it's not sustainable to live up to that image of what true manhood is. It's an ideal that is not sustainable, in my opinion. Whereas a female is more the female image is also high and some of it unsustainable.
Mm-hmm.
However, when it comes to communicating and emotions, it is a female can emote because we call that a female trait. But if a
Right.
male engages in that, then now we're looked at as weak.
Mm-hmm.
So living with that image,
Messaging, unfortunately, that messaging still exists because
absolutely,
you want the man to be able to do all of these things, and then when they do, it's used as like ammunition against them. And it's sometimes I look at like these posts on social media and I think to myself, honey, y'all don't know what y'all want because what are these new requirements? Like I don't my poor sons, if
yeah,
you ain't a millionaire, like you got to be able to spend, you know, $500 on a first date and if you want to go out, then you need to do X, Y, Z. I'm like, y'all ain't never date nobody in like when y'all was in college or whatever, y'all didn't ever date nobody because this just sounds so unrealistic. Like, do you know how broke we were? But like, what do
oh my
you mean?
goodness.
You know, like this is not realistic.
Stop, you're gonna re-traumatize me here.
Sorry. The idea of building together like just doesn't exist anymore. And there's so many expectations now. I will, you know, we talking about the men today, but you know, for all the women who are clutching the pearls right now, uh,
Hmm.
there are unrealistic expectations on women as well. But I see so many things that are just in my head. It's unrealistic to say that you want somebody to do all of these things, but then on the other side, when they do the things that require those things, then we're also upset. I know for me, um, I had there were things in my relationship that I had to accept, and it took me a little bit. I ain't gonna lie, it took me a little bit to accept where my husband had to he tried explaining it, but he didn't get through to me. It was really self-reflection, and I was kind of like, okay, the light bulb went off because I wasn't hearing nothing he was saying. And but we would have these same reoccurring arguments about like time spent together, right? And in my head, I'm like, I knew that his goal from the beginning was entrepreneurship. But what I didn't calculate was the fact that he wasn't there yet. And in order to get there, that means he had to work his 9 to 5 and then his 5 to 9 or however long, you know. And in my head,
Right.
I'm like, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not really liking this. And then it wasn't until it really clicked like, okay, I can't compare my what my relationship looks like because other people don't have the same dream. Other people don't have the same goal. And so, not having that same goal, it's not going to require the same effort. So, it's going to look different. So, I had to kind of wrap my head around, okay, this is what our house looks like, right? And this is how I can get a hold of the vision and support. And, and now that I'm an entrepreneur, I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. I get it now.
I get it.
Remember all those years
Yeah.
I was complaining? My bad. I'm gonna be late today. You know what I mean? So I understand it now. But again, that's something that we had to come on the same page about, because the requirements that people are putting out there.
Well, once again, society, Kiara, and once again, I'm I'm I am hard on men. Why? I'm hard, but I know that we can do better,
Mm,
and but because of our history, it's slowed us down,
mm,
and as a result, now we're not thriving, we're surviving
mhm.
collectively. Some
Yeah.
of us are thriving, but the majority of us are just surviving rather than thriving. And now having to deal with life on life's terms.
Yeah.
Now you're a father. I've had so many young men over my years say, Mr. Casey, I didn't have a father. I didn't know how to be a father.
Mm,
Okay. And I understand what they're saying. That's an explanation, not an excuse.
mm,
So that's what I mean when I'm hard on them. If you
yeah.
have love in your heart, you'll figure it out, because you want to be better. So yes, it's we can do better, and if we do better, our communities are going to start thriving,
Hmm.
because I think the time has come where single parenthood for this particular century is not going to be as effective as the previous,
Right.
because how the society is growing. The world is getting smaller, not bigger, because of
Hmm.
technology. Our young children are being exposed to things that their minds are not ready to process.
Hmm.
So they're smarter than I were at their age, but they're not as wise.
Mm,
So it's important that we uh, get on the same page, but we that means sitting down and having hard um, conversations,
hmm.
authentic, transparent conversations, um, where we try to try not to personalize it and keep our egos at a
Right.
low temperature.
Ugh, that
So
part.
yeah, that part. So that we can kind of have productive conversations. And that's hard to do when
Hmm.
you've never had them, especially I'm speaking for men now, when you've never had an opportunity like that. So us men, we resort to anger uh, as a way of, because we become defensive, and that's how we kind of fight back, because we feel we're being insulted or not appreciated. So we use our anger, and then anger, when you're trying to have a productive conversation, doesn't work. We all know that.
Right. You mentioned that you work with a lot of men and they're sharing that they've never had a father, right? And I can imagine that being able to relate with them on that and sharing how you've overcome so many of the obstacles, also not having a father. But it makes me also think about how many of them actually grieved what they didn't have, right?
Uh,
So we talk about, like, you can say it, you can verbalize it, but did you ever feel like and I've not had that. I don't have anyone on my caseload right now, but I can imagine that my mind would go to, like, did you feel that? Like, did you ever take time to mourn the opportunities that were missed so that you can begin really healing, so that you can focus on becoming the role that you never got to experience?
Good question, Kia.
That's
Excellent
why they pay
question.
me the big bucks. No, I'm
That's
just
why
kidding.
you get. So I can only respond from myself personally.
Yeah.
What I've noticed when working with young men and young boys over the years. It appears that the ones that, and this is a general statement, it appears that the ones that where their fathers are in their lives, they're inconsistently in and out of their lives, they appear to become more traumatized by that
Yeah.
because they're constantly getting inconsistency. They're constantly being disappointed,
Mm.
and that translate and manifests into anger,
Right.
manifests into oppositional defiance disorder. Okay, that's just from my experience. So those of you who are seeing this, don't quote me on this. Is just my experience as a clinician. Whereas in my particular case, my father was never there,
Mm.
never there.
Mm.
So because I had a very good nuclear family, my mother, my aunts, my uncles, in my case, in my unique brain processing, I didn't miss something that wasn't there. There was no expectation that someone was coming to pick me up, to
Mm.
buy me some Nikes, to do anything that was pleasurable with me. So I didn't have that expectation. So once again, I'm speaking from a personal journey.
Right.
That did not cause me uh, the the overt trauma or pain because once again he was never there.
Yeah.
So I was that's the difference is what I've seen over the years is the young people who that father is very inconsistent in and out of their lives. um, they seem to have their clinical symptoms seems to be a lot worse. So but
Mm.
that was my answer to that question. As I
Hmm.
got older now, that's when I started to reflect on that, and I had to make peace with it.
Yeah.
And I made peace with it by saying, hey, he missed out on all of this.
Right. Right.
That was
He,
how I
he
framed
should be
it.
grieving the loss of his experience.
Exactly. So that's how I kind of framed it from my experience. And I my way of coping with it is to say, hey, what did I miss out on? I
Mm.
missed out on something, but I was given so much by the family that I was raised in.
Hmm.
So I looked at it from the glass is half full, not the glass is half empty.
Do you think that your um, innate helper mentality and just how you are, um, do you think that played a big role in how you process that?
Um, I would say so. Yes, yes. I enjoy helping.
Hmm.
So maybe on a subconscious level, that's maybe why it led me to go into this line of work.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Things that make you go,
Hmm.
hmm.
Another thing that I think about, so we talked about it on, I believe we talked about it on a previous episode. Um, I'm trying to remember which one it was. It could have been like grieving the life you thought you would have, or grieving. I think it was like health and body grief. And actually, I had. Do you remember Melissa Tools? I had Melissa on. She and I talked about that. We both experienced infertility, and thankfully, we were both blessed to have our own children naturally, but we were going through that process around
Yeah,
the same time. And one of the things that I think about, even in parenting and grief from that nature, from the male perspective, like this idea of being strong, right? Like um being almost unemotional so that you don't set the other person off. But I know for a fact that in situations like that, whether it's like infertility, miscarriage, or even like a child that might have an illness, in terms of fatherhood, men experience, no, though it may not be your body physically experiencing that loss or whatever the situation is, you still experience it emotionally. Have you come across in your work any men who have had a hard time managing those emotions when it comes to like maybe infertility or miscarriage, or possibly like like the poor health of a child?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Um, Once again, society has defined a role for men,
Mm,
and we have accepted it really, really well.
mm.
So we're difficult to talk about emotions. Many of us don't know more than 4 words to describe our emotions, and one of those words is, "How do you feel?" "I'm okay."
Hmm.
Okay, yeah, I'm okay. Where so that is a part of the problem right there, is that we're not we haven't been oriented to share our emotions.
Yeah.
In fact, once again, it's looked at as a weakness historically in this country if men show their emotions. So now, when we do come across grief, loss, despair, we don't have the words. And if you don't practice something, you don't master something.
Yeah.
So then comes the issues, whereas once again, most females, not all, much more in touch with their feelings, much have a more diverse vocabulary on emotions, feel that it's okay to share her feelings with her girlfriends or whomever that trusted person would be. Whereas with men, those of us who buy into that mythology of what a man is, we struggle more with when we come across challenges in our lives, loss, uh, you name it, the many things that life will throw at you.
Yeah.
We are not well equipped to process it and cope with it in a healthy way.
So how do we change that? What do you say to the man who, or the spouse who's like, I see this and it's not healthy? How do you help that man?
They have to find the courage.
Mm,
They have to find the courage to say this is not healthy. And if they find that courage, then the next is a lot easier. Now you're willing to now take the steps necessary to continue to grow and get healthier. But you first have to be courageous enough to self evaluate and say, okay, yeah, this is not cool. This is not cool. So that first step of being courageous instead of fearful,
hmm.
because the fear is what stops us, right?
Right.
So the courage to overcome the fear, that's the first step. And that's a major step. Once you now can acknowledge that, okay, then it becomes easier not to say, okay, this is how I was raised, but you know what? I'm not going to allow that to define who I am.
Right.
And now you can take the steps of speaking to people, whoever that may be. They come to us as professionals, but speaking to people, if you have trusted people in your circle, speaking to them
Right.
openly and honestly. So at the end of the day, that it has to be internally driven. You have to, once again, overcome that fear by being courageous.
Right. Now, what do you say to that family member, that wife, girlfriend, mother, um, whomever, who sees the men in their life struggling, who are not yet making that decision to evaluate themselves or admit that they need help?
To the mothers, to the sisters, you don't ask easy questions, do you? You do not ask easy questions.
Well, because these are things that I see, right? And some of these, I'm talking to some of these women every
Hmm.
week, who are hoping that the man they married who was in a healthier headspace will return.
Hmm.
But they know they're not healthy and they won't get help. Like to the parent to the mother who sees their child declining, but because they're now an adult or at the age of consent, they can't force
Yeah,
them
to go
to get
away.
help.
Yeah.
So how do we encourage them to, because we know how we can be sometimes, the women can be where we think we're helping, but we're not. Um when conversations are not, they're not ready for certain conversations or they're not willing to participate in certain conversations, but we want to have that conversation right then and there. Like, how do we help the ones who see and recognize, like, hey, you need help,
Mhm.
but they're not able to force it? What can that person do
Well,
besides get their own help to manage
well,
it?
first recognize it's important for everyone to recognize that the only person they can control is themselves.
Right.
If you're trying to communicate to that individual, what is that old quote? You want to use more honey
The
than
vinegar.
vinegar. Um, and I'm making some assumptions now. If that male is going to be in a very defensive posture, so if you come
Hmm.
at him with a hammer, then that's not going to be the most effective way of killing a fly is to use a hammer.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know,
Right.
first, be aware that this person, their journey may have been different from yours. So giving them some grace, not excusing it, but giving them some grace. But please don't use the hammer to kill a fly.
We done bust your whole house up, ain't nothing standing.
Okay, so that's on a personal level. But also, if you know healthy males, healthy men, mentorship. Mentorship is an amazing way of helping men to become more self-aware and to grow. So I'm a
Hmm.
strong advocate of mentorship, of finding people who who are doing what I want to achieve, or people who I can respect, who can pour some wisdom into me. I didn't get this way by myself. So
Hmm.
sometimes, just putting them around other uh, elders who have been down that path and can share with them how they navigated that challenge on their own, because many of us come
Hmm.
from, once again, that single parent uh, parenthood. So
Yeah.
so out of all of that, I would say mentoring. If you can find a mentor, whether it's our pastor, whether it's a coach, whether it's an uncle, the only criteria is that they love and don't have hate in their heart. It's all
Hmm.
about kindness.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that tip. I'll make sure I'll pass it along to the ones on my schedule this week. I want to thank you for our conversation. I'm a wind it down, but I know that this conversation, um, it's so needed because we are still,
Yeah,
there's a lot of adults who are carrying pain from their
yeah,
childhood into fatherhood, into adulthood, and they're not sure how to navigate their own feelings. Um, and like I said earlier, two things can be true at the same time. You could be absolutely, and you can love your children and still grieve the relationship that you didn't have. You know, there might be moments where you're reminded in fatherhood of maybe you didn't even realize what you missed out on it until you started recreating or making memories, with your own children. Or even the pain in the journey of becoming a father and what that might look like and whatever pain that might carry. So I wanted to just make sure that we gave a little bit of time for the men in our discussion for grief. And I would have to say that this and the last episode have been wonderful discussions. And hopefully, there are some men out there who are listening. There's some wives and moms and aunts and uncles who are out there listening so that we can all be healthier together. I like to leave each episode with a reflection question. But before I do that, do you have any last words that you would like to share to encourage the men out there in terms of managing their emotion or becoming a healthier version of themselves?
For men, but it's not specifically for men, that once again, there's a myth that it's weak to be vulnerable. And I think that is a myth. I think it's strength when you're vulnerable.
Yes.
So for those men that are out there, it's okay to be vulnerable. Okay, and if you believe that, then it's going to help you to become the better version of yourself. Because once again, these stereotypes, we cannot live up to these stereotypes that society has defined on who we should be. So being vulnerable, I view that as a strength, not as a weakness. So that's my thoughts on it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Casey. I appreciate the conversation, your sacrifice.
No, once I get started, I'm good. So I really appreciate it.
Like, I woke up now.
I'm up now.
Well, I appreciate it. I really know that these I've gotten a lot of feedback on the last few episodes. I usually only do 6 and I call it a little season, right? But I've gotten so much feedback from people asking me to keep the conversations going because we don't talk about grief in general, but we really don't talk about it in these ways where we're just giving people the ability to acknowledge their experience, to validate, like, you know what, I'm glad someone is agreeing that that was a really crappy situation, but not just talking about it, but also finding ways to move through it. And so every episode has been wonderful, and I appreciate this one no less. So our reflection question, I'm going to put this in the chat. You don't have to answer this, Mr. Casey. I just want to hear from the people. And tonight's question is, what kind of father are you working hard to become and why? I'm going to put that in the chat. And I hope you all enjoyed tonight's episode. And if you have any comments or things you would like to share, please put those in the comment section. So, Mr. Casey, where can the people find you? I'm gonna ask it that way. Do you have is your site up?
Just Google me.
Okay. Just Google me. Patrick Casey. Yes. And Dover. I'm sure you will come right up because there's only one Patrick Casey. You have a wonderful evening. Thank you to everyone out there who has joined the conversation. And I look forward to talking to you. The next episode, we are going to talk about grief in our childhood and how that impacts us as adults. And it's a wonderful conversation. You won't want to miss that. So I will see you next time on the Self-Care Sound Mind podcast. Do you have something to share?
I wanted to say thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you. We've known each other for some years now, and you are an amazing talent. You're an amazing talent. Continue to do the good work that you're doing. And having that spirit of helpfulness and kindness. I'm so proud of you.
Oh.
Continue to be that helper. I much appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you for those kind words, kind sir. I appreciate you for everything that you do and all the referrals that you send my way as well.
More to come.
Everyone